The government's exceedingly healthy fiscal position has led many Singaporeans to question why the GST had to be raised in 2023 and 2024. A fiscal surplus of 6.8 billion is projected for the financial year 2025. As for 2024, even after the latest CDC and SG60 voucher program, 2024's fiscal surplus, originally estimated at a healthy $778 million, has been revised massively upwards to $6.4 billion. And if one casts their memory back earlier in this term, it was estimated by the government that 2021 and 2022 would see deficits. However, these turned out to be surpluses instead. The finance minister dished out the broad statistics for 2024 in his speech. 4.4% growth, inflation continuing to ease, wage increases outpacing inflation, median income of resident workers rising 3.4% above inflation, and income inequality being at its lowest since the year 2000. But for many, the lived reality of Singaporeans over the last 12 odd months does not correspond with the bright summary revealed by these figures. Life is very tough for the Singapore that is in the heartland. Concerns over jobs, prices, housing costs, and opportunities continue for many Singaporeans and their households. The numerous vouchers will give us help for a little while, but not for long. After all, no GST offset package lasts forever.
Since last week, after PM has delivered the budget speech, I've heard some Singaporeans comment that it is more of the same, distributing more vouchers, investing in research and development, and upskilling our workforce. In some ways, I beg to differ. I think Member Liang Wenhua has laid out in detail earlier measures and efforts which are extensive in this current budget, and not to forget past budgets, which are still ongoing, helping our residents and helping Singaporeans. But more of the same is not a bad thing. It means our government is not going to take short-term and populist stances just for special events happening this year. More importantly, it means our approach is working and achieving its aims. Income inequality is at its lowest since 2000, and we achieved better than expected economic growth of 4.4% last year. I think some members here today have highlighted that as well, about inflation being turbocharged due to GST. And the question is whether that has actually led to raise concerns about whether that will continue to have an impact on the cost of living. I do note that point. The cost of living is a major concern.
You have a minute left.
It's a major concern. But I think GST, inflation being impacted by GST being turbocharged may not be a fair point in general, because inflation went up in Singapore like all other countries due to other things like war and supply chain disruptions, and inflation at its peak was not as high in Singapore as compared to many other countries in the region or even globally. And in fact, in a PQ on 6 February 2024, which Mr. Liang Wenhua asked, the response highlighted that GST rate increase is estimated to contribute only slightly less than 1 percentage point to core inflation. And there are other factors such as high electricity and gas tariffs, which increase in oil prices as well as production costs. So I just want to highlight that point in general about the impact of GST on inflation, but there's other factors beyond GST, and GST's impact is quite slight.
With 2020 hindsight, there have been questions about whether we could have delayed the GST increase or been even more generous with the handouts. These reflections must be viewed in context. With geopolitical tensions and trade frictions intensifying, Singapore, one of the most trade-dependent economies, faces heightened risk from geo-economic fragmentation. In this volatile landscape, it is absolutely prudent to maintain some fiscal dry powder to respond swiftly to unexpected economic shocks that may come our way. Moreover, this fiscal strength will give us the agility to seize opportunities as they arise in this rapidly changing world order.
Another contributor to higher cost of living is the raising of GST from 7% to 9% in 2023 and 2024. At a time when Singaporeans were hit with high inflation. PSP has long proposed to either maintain GST at 7% or to reduce GST from 9% to 7%. We believe that any additional revenue required for higher social expenditure can be raised from reforming the corporate income tax. We have stated before in my budget speech in 2023 that under our current corporate income tax regime, companies with the highest profits actually pay the lowest percentage of their profits in corporate income tax. This is inequitable. The global agreement on a minimum effective tax rate for large multinational enterprises has compelled us to adjust the taxes on the largest companies. The government's $6.4 billion surplus for financial year 2024/25 and the expected $6.8 billion surplus for the next financial year further underlines that there was no necessity to raise GST from 7% to 9%. Let us also not forget that larger surpluses that go into the reserves mean bigger cost burdens on taxpayers when the government collects more than is needed to spend on public programs.